This is a continuation of the previous video. Let's go ahead and finish the problem that we were working on. We were just taking the square root of both sides to solve for sine. And remember we said that the sine in Q4 is going to be negative. So when we took the square root, we kept the negative. Okay, so the final answer we have to rationalize. We cannot leave it like this. The final answer should be a negative radical 77 over 11 for sine. All right, so the last type of problem that you're going to have on your homework is finding the 5 missing trigonometric functions. So I'm going to outline them right here so that we, whoops, it slipped, so that we have all of them that we need down the side. We know which ones we have and which ones we don't. All right, so sine is the reciprocal of cosecant, and this is going to be secant, and this is going to be cotangent. All right, so we were given that the cosecant is negative 5/2. A nice easy one to find is its reciprocal function, so we'll have sine is negative 2/5. All right, so we know that this is in Q3. So cosine is going to be negative, tangent's going to be positive, secant's going to be negative, and cotangent's going to be positive. So what trigonometric functions could we use to calculate these remaining missing functions? Well, I have sine. I used a reciprocal identity to get sine. Okay, so I'm just going to use sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, and I'm going to plug in my value for sine and solve for cosine, because I know if I have sine and cosine I can find all the rest of my functions, because tangent and cotangent are just quotients of sine and cosine. So this is 4/5 plus cosine squared of 4/25 equals 1. So cosine squared is going to be 21 over 25, and we said that cosine's negative in quadrant 3, so when I take the square root, I'm going to write the negative here. So this is going to be negative square root of 21 over 25. So if I took the reciprocal of that for secant, I get negative 5 over the square root of 21, which needs to be rationalized. So I get negative 5 square root of 21 over 21. And now also I have to find is tangent and cotangent. So tangent and cotangent, remember, are just quotients of sine and cosine. So let's find tangent. Tangent is going to be negative 2/5 over negative radical 21 over, oh, this is supposed to be a 5. Cosine is a 5. I don't know why I wrote the 5. So this is going to reduce to negative 2 over negative radical 21. So I know tangent is going to end up being 2 radical 21 over 21 when I rationalize. And if I just take a look at this, I can just take the reciprocal, radical 21 over 2, to get my cotangent function. Okay. Let's do one more example. If you feel like you need to sit and watch, feel free to stay and watch. Otherwise, you can get started on your homework. So let's first figure out what quadrant we're in. Cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and quadrant 3. Sine, okay, so greater than 0 means it's positive. So that's quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So this is a Q2 angle, right? Because that's the only quadrant that's being shared here. So let's go ahead and do sine. Sine is going to be positive. They gave us cosine already. That's negative 1/4. Tangent in Q2 is going to be negative. Cosecant in Q2 will be positive. Secant, I already know secant, it's the reciprocal of cosine, so that's going to be negative 4. And then cotangent in Q2 is also going to be negative. So these signs out here are just my reminders, okay? All right, so I'm going to circle them so it doesn't look like we're actually multiplying by a negative. All right, so I was given cosine, so I'm just going to go and find sine using the Pythagorean identity. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So I will get, 1/16 equals 1. So sine squared is going to be 15/16. And when I take the square root, I know it's going to be positive in quadrant 2. So sine is going to be the square root of 15/4. So let's write that over here, 15/4. And what do we know about the cosecant? It's going to be the reciprocal of this. And when we rationalize, we get 4 radical 15/15. All right, so let's go ahead and find the tangent. We'll just take the quotient of sine and cosine. Radical 15/4, negative 1/4. So if I multiply by 4/4, my 4's reduced out. And tangent is just negative radical 15. So cotangent is going to be the reciprocal of that. So I must rationalize. So I will get negative radical 15/15. And that's all the examples. Your homework will be very much like this.